Good evening, or morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Some of you that may not be familiar with me, my name is David Nolan. I'm part of the research and development team here at Aplyft. If you are a coach that uses Aplyft, you may be familiar with me from tutorial videos, my voice at least. So this evening I am going to be joined by sports psychologist Hugh Gilmore. So if you have any questions at all for Hugh throughout the conversation, please do drop them below. So Hugh will be joining us in a few seconds, and Hugh will give us a background to his work and where he currently engages in. But we have had a good response so far and several questions coming in. And some of the topics we're going to cover this evening is motivation, how to stay motivated as an athlete, expectations with athletes, and then some insights into the world of sports psychology at the elite level and what it is like to be a practitioner at that level. So I'm just waiting on Hugh to request to join to be part of this video, and we should get going. Now Hugh should be along any moment now. Just waiting for the connection to power up. Hugh, how are you doing this evening, sir?
Not too bad. How are you, David?
I am not too bad, not too bad at all. I'm just hoping that, considering Aplyft is a global company, that any listeners who may be not familiar with our accents will be able to comprehend two very strong Irish accents this evening.
Well, I'll do my best to try and speak in my best English, but no promises.
That's perfect. So we've talked about your background before, and when we were telling people about this Instagram Live, we put out that you're currently working at what we've said the highest level in terms of sport. A lot of people view Olympic level as the highest level a practitioner can work at. So if you'd like to give people just a very short synopsis before we get into the questions of what you currently do, so where you predominantly do most of your sports psychology work.
So at the moment, I predominantly do 2 days a week with British weightlifting with the Paralympic powerlifters, and 2 days a week with British athletics with their Paralympic and Olympic athletes, as well as another few days a month with British athletics pathway with the Futures program, and then a few other side as well. I suppose the other thing that, in terms of my experience, is not just sports psychology. I come from a coaching background within the GAA and also within Olympic weightlifting myself, despite being not a very good weightlifter. Tired, so that's my background.
Fantastic. So we've quite a bit to get through this evening, so I think we'll just go straight into it. And not surprisingly, a lot of questions that have come in have been around the concept of motivation, because for sport, it's a very strange time. Well, for humanity as a whole, it's a very strange time, but particular for sport, where with the likes of the Tokyo Games being postponed and all major sport off, it's a difficult time for athletes to stay motivated to keep training because there's a lot of uncertainty. They don't know when their sport and competition will return. It could be 3 months, it could be a year before they get to compete. So that in itself has some motivation issues. So from the athlete's perspective first, for athletes who may be struggling with their motivation at the moment, have you any practical tips or recommendations that may help them during this time?
Yeah, I mean, you've actually talked about two different concepts there in the sense that you've got the uncertainty and anxiety, but then also the motivation, which is could be determined as the feeling of how somebody feels. So let's tear that apart. Start with the uncertainty. Yeah, things are uncertain at the moment, but what is important is actually ensuring that you stay within your focus within the things that you can control. So that is what you can do in terms of your training, but also where things are unknown and your planning and periodization is out the window. You plan up until where you know or where you can make a decision. So you plan points where you might have information. So, for example, UK lockdown is 3 weeks at a time. You're basically planning up until those 3 weeks. And even though you don't know what the future is, the fact that you know what the next 3 weeks is going to be allows you to have some certainty, and that certainty will help reduce any anxiety. The second aspect of that, motivation. So the big theory in motivation is DC and Ryan's self-determination theory, which is three components, essentially relatedness, competency, and autonomy. So those are big psychological words, as is self-determination theory. So let's just say motivation is basically, can you relate to it? Are you in control? And are you experiencing success? So if your motivation is dipping, one of those three things is going to be affected. So essentially, if you're not, how do you relate to your current training or your current process of training? So having a why behind that will help you raise your level of relatedness to your training. So the why is either you enjoy the training, or you're doing it for the pride of the club, or you're doing it because you've got a big competition next year, or you're doing it because you've got a 5-year goal. So find a why, and your why may be any one of those, or none of those. It may be something completely different. So just sit down and keep asking yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? What do I enjoy about it? What am I getting out of it? And then you'll essentially understand how you do your training more. The next one of those is autonomy. Are you in control? Well, you're not. You're a bit restricted. There's going to be some limitations on your training. So where can you exercise control? I currently have athletes who are training in the backyard, throwing shot put and things like that. And it's a case of they do what they can. So find out what you can control and what you can't. And the best thing that I've done with them is actually get a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, things I can control, things I can't about the training, and then make a list, and then focus on what you can control. Once you've stated it, I know it sounds really simple, but you actually going through the process of writing these things out makes you think differently about the problems you face, and that simple process will make things so much easier. The last area, so you've got relatedness, autonomy or control, and then competency. You're not going to be happy, you're not going to be motivated unless you're feeling success. And the way to do that is to set something you can achieve. Now, people talk about having big goals and saying, oh, I want to earn £1 million, I want to go to the Olympics, whatever these big, massive motivational goals are. And that's all very impressive. I'm sure people have heard the story of Arnold Schwarzenegger writing a check to himself for £1 million. Things like that, right? And that's great to have that. But actually, you can't experience success by doing that. You need to experience success today, maybe in the next 5 minutes. So what's the success that you can achieve in the next 5 minutes? The real simple, easy thing. And the reason why that's so important is because it's like a domino, right? Or a snowflake that causes an avalanche, right? The snowflake hits another snowflake, hits another snowflake, next thing you know, there's an avalanche, right? It's a knock-on effect of that small bit of success, boosts your motivation. So those are the three areas. But I like to, as you know, talk about something else, which is commitment. Commitment's really important too. And I find that once you get success of achieving something, or once you tap into the why, or once you realize what you can control, the motivation comes after that. The commitment is to sit down and look at those three areas, and the commitment is to go out and train regardless of how you feel. Everybody's done bad training sessions, and you know what? Loads of bad training sessions make good progress, and better progress than no training sessions, and you'll feel better for doing that than you will have for having done nothing. So that would be my basic approach to motivation. I'm looking at it from that point of view, from an applied perspective. Is there any clarifications you'd seek there, David?
No, I like that, and I think the concept of the goal setting or that is very important. The idea of building momentum, and I think you'll have people that are quite prominent in that area, such as James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, and these type of things that will talk about the importance of these small, very attainable, that are well within your grasp goals, and like that, building upon them. And I think we can all see that in our own lives where, say for myself, when I'm writing an article, I have this big overarching goal of I want to write this monster article about something, but the motivation mightn't be there, but to simply opening the laptop, it's like, right, by in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to go into the kitchen, open the laptop and sit down at the desk. That's how the start of it. And then it might be, I just want to go in, write the outline or whatever, write a plan. But it's these small things where if the goal is, I want to write that article the next week, there's nothing actionable there. That the finite or when I've achieved that is when I've done a plethora of other work that our small attainable goals towards that. So I suppose I really like that from an applied perspective. And to expand on that, because one of the other questions we got in was how to manage athlete expectations and when it in a big goal. So when we've this kind of two pronged. So athletes who may have goals that are in the coach's eyes unrealistic and not attainable. So that could be from a powerlifting perspective, someone that wants that they're a novice or intermediate and like, right, I want to put 100 kilos onto my squat in the next 12 months or I'm out, or I want to hit this world record by this date. It's very definite, but mainly unrealistic. So how do you deal with those kind of expectations? And then just general goal setting, because a lot of people talk about the importance of setting goals, but and we hear the idea of SMART goals being often promoted. But when it comes to actually goal setting with athletes, what are your pragmatic approach to it? How do you go to actually setting these goals?
Dude, my brain's very small, so when you ask questions, so
Oh.
I've drawn it up on the whiteboard behind me, and the C stands for confidence, and the I stands for importance. So essentially, then this relates back to the previous question as well when it comes to goal setting. So when you're setting a goal, or you're trying to enhance somebody's motivation, it's really important to consider where their level of confidence or where their level of motivation is. So this would be a low level of importance and a low level of confidence. And there's no hope that anything that has a low level of confidence or a low level of importance is going to get done. Whereas actually, if we go to something that is high level of confidence and a high level of importance, that's going to be your sweet spot where things are definitely going to get done. So for example, that's going to be something like eating, right? Eating is fairly important to do. You're fairly confident you can get food most of the time into your face hole below your nose. That's an example of something where confidence and importance is really high. So what I would implore coaches or athletes to do is, out of 10, ask yourself before you set this goal, how confident are you and how important is it to set that goal? This is known as a scaling ruler. It comes from a therapy that I'm trained in called motivational interviewing. So essentially, whenever I look at this, I want to make sure that somebody's goal is set to something that is at least an 8 out of 10 for confidence and importance. If it's lower than 8 out of 10, there's no point in doing it. It's actually more important to talk about it and explore why it's not 8 out of 10, because something else is likely more confident or more important, or you'll be more confident of achieving something, or it'll be more important. So from my point of view, that's a prime skill for evaluating how useful that goal is going to be. When it comes to SMART goal setting, the thing that annoys me about SMART goal setting is you take 30, 40 years of psychological research and you turn it into 5 letters, and then you assume that 5 letters have all the magic. Now, they do have some magic, but actually there's a really good paper by Shepard who talks about how there's so many variations of what SMART actually means. It's hard to tell the method from the science now. So when I look at goals, I think confidence and importance and do that. And then from that, I ask people specific questions like, how do you know you're being successful here? What does this mean to you if you achieve it? What does good look like? And how would somebody who doesn't know anything about your sport or your training know that this was being achieved and was good? So basically being really specific. Those questions enable specificity, and that allows you then to understand whether or not you're achieving a goal. As for the rest of it, like, it should be fairly obvious. Like, there's no point in me going over why things need to be measurable, why things need to be achievable. That behind me is what the achievable aspect is. The time-based, again, deadlines enhance your performance. If you don't have a deadline, it's never going to happen. So I do like the SMART goal setting, but I think it's actually can be misinterpreted, and you need to ask yourself, how do you actually do each steps? The other thing that I think is important is to think of the types of goal that you set, which people don't often pick up on. And those would be, is it an outcome goal? For example, squatting 200, that's an outcome goal. But a performance goal would be beating somebody in a competition. It doesn't matter how you perform, but actually it matters. It doesn't matter how you perform, because if everybody else performs badly, you might hit your performance goal of winning, and that actually then means that you might not have improved. For example, if I go and play football with 8-year-olds and score 5 goals, that is not me saying that I'm a good footballer or I'm getting better at football. That's a performance goal, but it's not actually enhancing development. So an outcome goal is where you actually can measure your performance and see are you sort of improving towards something. And it's important to do a mixture of those. The performance goal might be the long-term motivator, and the outcome goal is going to be the short-term motivator. That's maybe going to be a weekly outcome where you notice your progress going on. The other thing that people forget is process goals. And process goals are often misunderstood. Process goals are how you do things, and they're actually quite qualitative. And this is where goal setting goes really up the left. If you only have numbers and you only have outcome and performance goals, you can lose your quality. Now, we've all seen people who in their early stages chase numbers, and because they chase numbers, their technique goes out the window. They start taking risks because numbers are more important than the quality. So my process of setting goals is like, what does it look like if you achieve that number and have a high quality whenever that number is achieved? You need to really understand that. And the reason being is that people don't realize this, but this is the reason the financial crash happened in 2008, is because the goals were set for the stockbrokers and the mortgage people, and they were going after sales. They weren't going after quality of clients, and that caused the subprime collapse. It's the same with your training. At a certain point, there's a quality cutoff, and if you don't have a quality cutoff in your goal setting, then you're doing your goal setting wrong, and you're going to end up in catastrophe. For anybody who's a sports psych, and I see there's a couple of them listening, there's a paper called Goals Gone Wild, and I'd recommend reading that because it talks about the pitfalls of goal setting. So I think that's enough on goal setting. Is there anything I've missed out in goal setting before I go on to the next bit of your question?
No, I really like that with the goal setting. Then I think it's a nice where you're saying that everything must be measurable and realistic, and we can objectively view whether we're progressing towards that goal in a very systematic way. And that leads us in then to the last bit of the question, which is around managing expectations. For athletes may have unrealistic expectations, which can often be difficult, and often sometimes I think in our current fitness climate it's sometimes encouraged. I think every influencer at some time or another has posted aim for the moon and you might miss and hit the stars, or some other generic basic stuff that actually has no substance to it. So what is your opinion on managing expectations within athletes, or athletes to have what on the surface appear to be unrealistic expectations?
Right. Well, it's interesting because in people who are depressed people are not actually negative. They actually process reality much clearer, and sometimes they actually process reality to the point where let me explain this correctly. They are not negative, they're just less optimistic. So they have a level of reality, but not the optimism. So it's a feeling optimistic. And as humans, as healthy humans, we need a level of optimism. And the reason we need a level of optimism is because human success depends on taking risks. Some people will be more likely to take risk that is too great and may suffer a great loss, or they may pull one out of the bag. Now, the other thing is that some people don't, and those people are obviously lower risk people, or they may have a mental health issue whereby they're more depressed, or they're depressed, and that affects then that would then affect their processing of chance and optimism and determine then future behaviour. So is this optimism necessary, and can you be too optimistic? There's some research that says like leaders are actually highly optimistic or utopian people who are driven towards a utopia. And again, we need people like this in society to help us see things differently. But drilling right down to the lifter, if the lifter is too optimistic, there would be an issue in that, does that cause them to do anything that's bad, right? If they just come in and have high expectations and train hard and make sensible jumps and make sensible attempts in their training, that's not an issue. But if they're doing something that's causing them failure, then that's the point where you need to step in as a coach. And maybe a good thing to do is like a decision-making journal, where you say, right, before you're training, I want you to write down what decisions you have to make. Before you decide to jump up maybe 20 kilos, write down what you expect is going to happen and whether you think is a good thing or bad thing. Then do it, and then review what the decision was. And that will allow for like a feedback loop to be created in this decision-making journal, and it'll educate them. But I wouldn't particularly want to knock out somebody's unrealistic expectations unless it's having a negative effect in their performance. So that's down to the coach to decide, is this actually holding them back, or are they just going to be long-term disappointed? But similarly, if they've got expectations of hitting certain targets within certain years, like we all have expectations like that, and over time, our beliefs and what's possible is updated. Maybe it's just a folly of youth or a folly of the beginner, and over time that will level off. So I don't think unrealistic expectations are necessarily a performance issue. I think it's something that over time. But if it is a problem, a decision-making journal is a really useful way to combat that. Was there anything else in that you think is important to explore?
There's a question there that's very good, just from someone that's watching live now, and that's, we discussed there unrealistic expectation or high expectations from the athlete themselves, but this particular viewer works in youth sport and has an issue where the parents set high expectations or want their child to be at the level of, say, other children who are further along in their athletic and physical development. Is there any time in your career which you have to deal with this kind of stuff, or any advice you'd give for someone that coaches youth athletes where the parents are the issue, that are having unrealistic expectations that are beyond the development stage of the child?
Yeah. My knee-jerk reaction is get rid of the kid and get rid of the parents. Because if you want a short answer, that's the easiest way. But yeah, it's a common thing, joking aside. So let's explore that. The parent wants the best for the child and wants to be pushy and push the child on. So actually, there's a couple of things you can do. One is like ask the parent what they want from their child, and then help the parent understand how they can help the child. So give the parent something to do as opposed to interfering with the child's learning and development. So if it's a case of, all right, what's really useful? If you ask the child, what did you enjoy from your sport today? What did you learn today? What are you going to practice on? What are you excited about? Those are all big open-ended questions which take the focus away from the parent trying to push the child and actually getting the parent involved and engaging the child about thinking about their sport. And if the parent then can listen to those answers, validate those answers, and not add in, that will support the child's development. So giving the parents something to do along the lines of those questions would be my first approach. The other thing is then you've got a case where the parents might be pushy, and at that point, I don't know a coach who hasn't dealt with this, and then you need to have clear boundaries. And if you have clear boundaries and expectations, you then can have clear consequences whenever those boundaries and expectations happen. So set that up. Set that up with everyone. I'll set that up with you now. Like if we're having a I've got certain expectations. You're not going to do X, Y, Z, right? So I know there's a few questions you want to ask that you're not allowed to ask, and those are the boundaries, if you know what I mean. But you need to do that with parents. You need to do that with your athletes. When you have clear boundaries, it makes things easier because then you have this sort of pushback against that behaviour, and that keeps people in this line or this trajectory of behaviour as opposed to stepping over. So I think it's like bring them in, to push them away. Give them something to do that's non-detrimental, that is something they know they can do, and is going to help the child's development. I think the other thing is, you really need to get the person to think about the long-term picture and the consequences of overly interacting. So I'll draw this up. It might not go down well, but I'll draw it up. Essentially, if you overly support somebody, where you just give them feedback, that's a straight line of performance. So you just give them feedback. That's the performance, and this line is time at the bottom, and that's the performance. If I give you instructional feedback and tell you what to do, jump through that bit. All the coaching tools you can think of, people's performance will improve, and it'll improve at a faster rate over time than if you ask questions, right? If I give you guided feedback, right, where I ask you what your thoughts are, your performance is going to be actually a bit lower. But this plateau at the top here, if I stop coaching you, stop giving you instructions, you stop learning. Whereas if I give you guided feedback, you develop the ability to self-learn and self-teach. So let's coaches who are continually shouting instructions, or parents who are continually telling their kids what to do, the kid then never knows what to do. Whereas look at a skateboarder. How does a skateboarder learn? They learn because they lose their teeth, right? When they make a mistake, they get the feedback of gravity introducing them to the ground, and essentially that feedback is their guided learning, and them essentially learning that, oh, I've made a mistake there, I need to try something different. So in between instruction and guided feedback, you're going to have your philosophy, because if in a short-term period of time you want somebody's performance improve, hi Dan, if you want somebody's performance to improve, you essentially want instructional feedback if it's a short period of time. But if it's over 6 years, you're not going to always have that chronic input of coaching. So actually you want them to develop the ability to self-learn and self-coach and sustain that motivation. So let me see. Does that explain it? Here's why it's a philosophy. If your competition is here within 3 months, instruction is going to be better. If your competition is here at this point, where the two lines cross, then it's up to you how you get there. But actually, in real life, it isn't like that, and that's why we need a philosophy. You need to determine, are you developing long-term athletes, or are you just getting short-term improvements? Look, if you're a personal trainer and you've got somebody for a 6-week program or 12-week program, it's all instruction. You want fast results. They learn the skill fast. But if you're actually an athletic developer, a coach who's what you want long-term athletes, you have to decide what you want. So managing pushy parents, get them involved, set clear boundaries, understand your philosophy, teach them your philosophy. There isn't a wrong answer, but it's up to you to have the answer. I wouldn't take my answer as the appropriate one. Use what I've talked about to build your own answer would be a better one.
Yeah, I really like that, and I like the concept of putting these barriers out right at the start, because that makes it easier then when parents do overstep them. It's easier for the coach then to approach, like, look, we set the boundaries initially, it's clear you've overstepped them, and now we can have a discussion about the best way to go forward from there. And then the idea of then, essentially, I like that concept that a good coach, anyone that's in coaching, aspires to get their clients to a level where they essentially don't need the coach anymore, where it just becomes that the coach is there to bounce ideas off, and becomes a symbiotic process where you have personal trainers maybe that are of lower quality that try to make their clients dependent upon them for repeat business, whatever it may be. Where that philosophy, if we educate them or guided feedback, as you say, that we get to a stage where they're coaching themselves anyway and they're becoming self-aware. So I really like that. what I think is a caveat or something that leads off from that, from the youth sports perspective, and we know with adolescent athletes, they're very much especially in particular sports, such as gymnastics or sports, which are more sports where body composition plays a huge role, that there may be some disordered eating or risk of this. So one question that has come in as a coach, or from your perspective as a psychologist, if you're working with athletes that you believe or suspect are engaging in harmful activities, such as disordered eating, how do you broach that with the athlete? So how do you initiate that conversation, or what is the correct way to approach that situation?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I'm not a clinical psychologist. I work in the performance area, and I'm trained in the performance area. So I couldn't possibly give an answer as to how to optimally deal with an athlete with an eating disorder. However, that's not to say that I don't have advice as for how to have a conversation around a difficult topic. So I need to draw that distinction. My advice is not clinical advice here in dealing with eating disorders. First of all, you should broach things with people. There isn't any research to say that even if somebody's suicidal, if you think they're depressed, they might be having suicidal ideation. There isn't any research to say that talking about these things is bad, but how you talk about such things is critical. So essentially, you don't want to tell people what to do. You don't want to tell people what you think. You want to understand what they think. So it's really important to go into it with a curious and open mind, and you use phrases such as, "Look, I just want to express a concern." So a really useful technique that I have for giving challenging information is POT, P-O-T. It comes out of motivational interviewing literature again, and within that it's known as elicit, provide, elicit. So I'm just giving those references for people who are psychs or want to know more. But for the layperson, POT will suffice. And POT stands for P, ask for permission, O, give your opinion, and T, ask for your thoughts, right? So I might go along the lines of, look, do you mind if I share something I've been thinking about lately with you, about how you're doing? That's asking permission. And then you go, I'm a wee bit concerned about your body weight. I'm a wee bit concerned about your eating habits. Is there something going on there? And then follow up with, what are your thoughts on that? Have you any thoughts on that? And that allows for you to come in. First of all, because you've asked permission, they're more likely to engage in the conversation. Then you've given your opinion, but you're not concerned with your opinion. You're concerned with their thoughts and your opinion. That's the key area, is their thoughts and your opinion, not you telling them. So that technique of permission, opinions, thoughts allows you to put in something that's quite challenging in such a way that you might have a productive conversation. And then from that, just listen, be silent, and it's a really powerful thing just to sit in silence with somebody and just go, well, how are you? And just do it in such a way that you're going to accept anything they say. And if you can convey that acceptance of them and anything they could possibly say, they're probably more likely going to open up. So I think that would be my advice, is listen really hard and find out how to do that. And you do that by asking open questions that aren't leading. If you do give some concern or share some concern, you ask your opinion on it, and then sit in silence and listen. And even if they say something back to you, a very simple technique is just repeat back one or two words that they say to you. So I'll give you an example of this, David, if that's okay. David, tell me about your last disappointing competition, just briefly. Not all of them. Ooh. I know they're all disappointing.
Which one to choose from? I suppose my last disappointing competition from a powerlifting perspective would have been a year and a half ago, failing a 250 deadlift that I nearly got. That's probably the one that resonates with me most.
Why was that a bad experience for you?
Because looking back and reviewing, and even immediately after it happened, I knew that it was attainable, that I just, for whatever reason, didn't go to plan and failed the lift when I really should have got it. There was no reason that I shouldn't have got the lift.
You should have got the lift.
I think so, from
Okay.
a technical perspective, yeah.
So what I did there, I listened to the whole thing. I picked out one thing you said, well, and I could have said you had high expectations. I could have said you felt. I could have summarized the whole thing as a missed opportunity, but because I said the smallest of words, that then allows you to go. Yeah, it was a missed opportunity. Yeah, whatever it is, allows you then to continue on talking. I help people who are in difficult situations like that by listening, because when you listen, it might be the first time they've actually been truly listened to in their whole life. And again, that's how you would broach difficult topics with somebody with eating disorders or a mental health issue or otherwise. Yeah, so those would be techniques that I would try and do.
With those techniques, you seem to is having those type of conversations with people, I imagine, is a learned skill, as you talk about motivational interviewing. But one aspect of it that I imagine many people would have difficulty with is being comfortable with silence and actually waiting for the response to come and not feeling the need to, where you said there, you should have got the lift, and then you follow that with silence, where individuals might be inclined to fill that space with words or expand more upon what they said if silence ensues afterwards. So is it something that, having these conversations, you have to be comfortable with the silence until the response comes?
Yes. So yeah, I think a good thing is occupy yourself in the silence. So when you occupy yourself, don't make an intimidating eye contact with them. Allow them a space to look away. Just sort of take a deep breath. It's like, yeah, so how's things? Just sort of go into it calm. And if you can, so there's a thing called emotional contagion, whereby my emotions will be picked up by you, and you might actually then start to feel those. Similarly, if somebody is really anxious, then I might feel really anxious. So it's important for you to be aware of how your emotions can transfer to someone else. That can transfer into competition day as a coach as well. If you're an anxious coach, better find a way to calm down, because that will transfer onto the athletes. Similarly, if your athlete is anxious, you going in and being calm is going to cause that to spread. You want your calm to spread. So a deep breath, relax. You don't have to achieve anything in a conversation where you're listening. You're just being there. So I think that would be my advice. And the silence is important. I think the other thing is yourself when the silence is awkward. If they really don't talk, then at that point you can say something like, "You don't want to talk about this with me now. That's okay." And really mean that. It is okay if they don't talk to you. Really mean that. It's not just, "You don't want to talk about this. That's okay." You have to really mean that. You have to be able to say, "Look, I'm betting everything I have in this relationship, and that you don't want to talk about this. That's okay, and we can leave here now." So really mean that when you say something like that, because that kind of level of integrity and honesty in a conversation will show that they really care, that you're listening, and that you're not trying to force yourself on them. And that in itself builds the relationship even stronger, which might allow them to open up.
I like that, and I think that resonates across the whole coaching spectrum, just a general theme of being actually invested in the relationship and actually caring about the relationship that you're building, and being open and honest and transparent with your athlete, client, or whoever it may be. And that leads in nicely to a question that came in and might give insight into the real world of sports psychology. And that's, what's the most difficult case you personally have ever dealt with as a sports psychologist?
It wouldn't be professional of me to discuss my work
Mm.
uh, uh, at a level whereby it wouldn't be professional of me to discuss the most difficult cases that I have dealt with, or talk about who I work with specifically or what we've been through. Um, but I can give a general idea as to things that may happen, and things that are difficult uh, within, I suppose, what's the word, within like coaching and within sports psychology, within elite sport, and just within sport in general. So I suppose there's obviously the big one is mental health issues. People do have mental health issues. I've had a mental health issue myself in the past. I'm sure like most of your audience will either have one or have had one. Depression, anxiety, they're standard run-of-the-mill things, but actually those things are quite serious, and you have to be able to understand when to refer those things and also how to broach those topics with people. I've dealt with situations whereby, you've got really pushy coaches or pushy parents, who, to the point of they care more about the performance, or they're more focused on the performance than they are on the athlete's well-being, and those are very difficult situations to manage. But similarly, I've also dealt with athletes where they care more about the performance than their well-being and willing to risk further injury or illness. And again, those situations are just as challenging. So I think, like, I suppose the other thing that I have had to deal with is challenging is actually reporting um, reporting abusive parents who or an abusive parent to social services. Again, stuff like that. Everyone does their child protection courses, but you know what? Say when the brown stuff is on the worry thing, it's a very real issue, and everything you learn in child protection courses goes out the window, and you're panicking. And that's me as an experienced person, experienced coaching, sports psychologist, first ever reporting case to social services. That's a difficult thing to do. But again, if one of your audience members is a teacher, that's probably run of the mill, one a year type thing, depending for them. So like my job has been difficult at times, but people who work in medical industry, teaching, or things like that are going to be dealing with much more severe things than me. Um, yeah,
I
so
suppose for this person, they wanted an insight into maybe a lot of people when it comes to sports psychology don't understand what a sports psychologist actually does. And I think the ones that become prominent in the media are often ex-players who come in as motivational speakers, and there's this concept of coming into the changing room and amping the players up, whatever it may be. But what does day-to-day work look like for a psychologist working at the sports psychologist working at the highest levels with teams, with Olympians, with whoever it may be? So what does the actual work entail?
okay, so there's two types of sports psychologists, or two ways of doing sports psychology. There's somebody who works one-on-one only, where you come, you discuss what it is, we discuss how you're thinking about that, we put together a plan of how we're going to develop you over the next period of time, and work like that. The second way of working is like immersed, primarily what I do, whereby I'm continually discussing information that coaches have, information that SSC has, information that nutrition has, information that performance lifestyle has, and it's trying to make sense of all of that, and then also the athlete and their experience, and then trying to join the dots between what's the missing thing, what's not overlapping. It's important to have different views in that kind of team, but it's also important to create an understanding and a shared approach. So those are two ways of working it, and my sort of day works between maybe having one-to-ones with athletes, but then also doing meetings with staff to understand their viewpoints on where gains can be made by athletes. Or similarly, actually, with athletes need to also direct their staff and tell their staff, like, I think we should be doing this. And even though that might be a controversial and different, and maybe a non-expert opinion that's coming from a place of expertise with that athlete's experience needs to be validated, understood, and we need to know why they think the way they do. So if they think, for example, front squats are more important than back squats, and they have front squats in the program, we need to know why. Or similarly, if it comes to nutrition, if they think, look, I need to be eating 6 eggs a day or whatever it is, or taking in more collagen, those opinions need to be voiced. Their expertise and understanding of the problem is just as valid as a nutritionist's or SSEs or psychs, and that needs to come together. So it's about creating a shared mental model and an overlap of people's views within a high-performance system. I kind of think of it nearly like politics. I don't know if you watched the House of Cards show.
I have, yeah.
Like, there's nearly a degree of politics of holding a lot of bits of different information and trying to see where the elements are in the performance team are blind and bringing those blindnesses into the open light. And that's how I view the kind of interactional stuff that I do at a team-based level. I think those are the two sort of different ways that I work. I suppose to go into like what's difficult in sports psychology or what's the most difficult thing that I've done. I think the most difficult thing is just lasting. Like it's difficult to last in this industry. I don't know many sports psychs who stay within a sport for a long period of time, and I think that is actually having consistent developing from the point of when you're crap coming in because you're wet behind the ears to 5 years later you're less crap and less wet behind the ears and you're still trying to develop. That's what lasting's about, and that's the most difficult thing to do as a sports psychologist. People will come in, flash in the pan, out the door, won't be heard of again.
I think the same can be said for all facets of the fitness industry, that people come in eager after getting a certain qualification, but then the continued professional development and always trying to upskill and raising your standards, setting yourself a new higher standard and constantly raising your standards is what seems to be the key characteristics of those that build a long and fruitful career. And discussing about that, you say we have a lot of people come in the industry and flash in the pan and come back out. It seems to be that everyone is a sports psychologist these days. If we look, say, across social media, across everywhere, that there's a lot of advice maybe given out, dished out around sports psychology and mental attitude, and it can be often difficult for the layperson to decipher good information from bad information. So have you any advice around that, how we can differentiate good versus bad sports psych information, or what are some red flags maybe that might allow the layperson to understand that this person may not be qualified or may not be accurate in the information that they're pushing out there?
So the first thing about spotting what's bad sports psychology is if you ask a sports psychologist how is this information not going to work, when is it going to fail, and they don't have the right answer or they don't have an answer, then they haven't thought about the problem long enough. So for example, if I come to you and I say let's do some goal setting, and then somebody asks me, well, what's the contraindications of goal setting? Then actually, if I can't answer that question, I'm not a good sports psychologist. Everything that I do has a negative consequence. Everything that you do as a coach has a negative consequence. Everything that you do as a human has a negative consequence. There's no way of getting away from the fact that our actions contain both positive and negative consequences for us, or helpful and unhelpful. So that's a good way to sort of like catch out a bad sports psychologist, is ask them, where does this fail? And if they can't answer that question, you know they haven't thought about it long enough. So that would be my first thing. The second thing is, what is this approach better than? So like they should have a number of approaches maybe, or a number of ways of solving the problem. So one of the things I'll do is I'll do like a case formulation of like trying to understand the problem and then trying to understand what maintains the problem, what makes the problem better, what makes the problem worse, what are the factors of the athlete system, what are helping things. And then from that, you'll try and understand what approaches you can take, which may be dialing up or dialing down certain elements within their experience. The other thing is, I really Thomas Sowell, these three questions which I rely on for critical thinking, which are: where's the evidence? What is this better at? And what's the cost? So if you ask them those three questions or a variation of those on their approach, and they can't answer, thought about it enough. I think the other thing is, like, what is a sports psychologist? In Ireland, I can call myself a sports psychologist because the term's not protected, although I'm accredited by the sport as an accredited sports site. Within the UK, I can call myself a scientist in the area of sports psychology because I'm a BASIS accredited sport and exercise scientist in that domain. I'm also working towards the BPS version of the stage 2, which is the HCPC accredited sports psychologist. So those are the protected terms. Within America, again, there's different protected terms with ASP, I believe, and maybe another organization. So find out what are the protected terms or the accredited bodies. If you don't have an accreditation, chances are you're dealing with somebody who maybe isn't capable of being a sports psych. It may be okay if they're training or in the process, that's fine because they'll be getting supervision. But actually, if they're not accredited by an appropriate body, again, though, some countries listening don't have accreditation bodies, and you're probably going to look at what qualifications. They'll need an undergrad and a master's, and then probably some sort of supervision to make sure they're not doing any harm. So that's how I would go about identifying a good sports psychologist, or at least one that will not do any harm.
Brilliant. I like the critical questions there that you asked, and I think they can be applied across a wide range of fields. We're coming up on time, users. There's just one more question that I think we'll finish up on, and it's the idea of data collection with athletes from a sports psych method. So we often see like the likes of the POMS-B, so the profile of mood states or whatever it may be, distributed to athletes, and a lot of coaches will do that to assess readiness and a plethora of other things. So as a sports psychologist, is data collection something you utilize? Is it something systematic, or is that something that's very difficult to conceptualize in terms of sports psychology? Because I think in sports science and sports as a whole, there is a certain expectation that, look, everything should be quantified. We should be able to measure it and quantify it and put it into nice little boxes. So does sports psych allow and facilitate that, or is it something that's just not attainable?
That's a good question. So is it all right to swear in this?
We'll keep it as PC as we can, please.
Well, a real example, right? I, in my early days, was given a questionnaire to use with athletes who were on a pathway, and a development pathway, and the athlete's response was, all you psychologists ever want us to do is fill out surveys, fill in the blanks yourself. But straight away, what that did was me coming in with a survey and a questionnaire challenged the level of relationship that I had with that athlete. So if I come in with a survey or questionnaire and put somebody through this arduous process of filling in surveys and questionnaires, it actually it can damage the relationship. So from a point of view, I don't collect information like that unless it's information whereby I'm seeking a measurement on mental health, where I'd use the GAD or the PHQ, and I'd use that from the point of view of the athletes express the concern of a mental health issue. I've used the GAD or PHQ then to identify, do they have any symptoms? Are they in what we would term a clinical cutoff zone, whereby there's actually a case for a referral here? So that's how I would use those. From a research perspective, I have used the PDCE Q2 as a measurement of a group to collect information about group development and to track group development, but not at an individual level. I don't think, because I generally work on a one-to-one basis, it's more of a therapeutic kind of approach where I take like a CBT approach to the problems. Actually, rational emotive behavior therapy is the approach specifically I take, or a motivational interviewing approach is the main focus, and that doesn't necessarily require quantitative data. So that raises a question, and it should raise a question. The question of how do I know if I'm doing a good job? Well, I operate on the basis that I don't, right? That means that I doubt everything that I do. I doubt my connection with the athlete. I doubt my effectiveness, and I'm continually seeking to see, am I failing? So I'm testing, am I aware of where I'm going wrong? Now, that sort of creates a sense of anxiety in how I view my practice, but actually it makes me very aware to the small changes and the subtleties, because I'm always questioning, do I have a good relationship? Am I being effective? How can I say that I'm being effective? So I'll do this, what we call triangulation. I'll ask the athlete, have I been effective? How have I been effective? How do you know I'm being effective? That's really good data if they're able to express how and why. But similarly, if I go to the athlete, and I have done, a session out of 10, and they say it was an 8, and I go, how could it be a 9? I don't know. Then I know they know how to rate my effectiveness. So asking difficult questions like that is really useful for triangulating how effective you are as a psychologist. But I'm not heavy on the questionnaires on a one-to-one basis. I think it can become arduous. So it's only if needed or only where necessary. Then I also, again, rate my effectiveness through biannually PDRs and things like that, where actually anonymous feedback is sought from athletes. I suppose, if you get a score, like you mentioned profile and mood states, if you get that score, what does it actually mean that you've got a certain score? How do you relate a number, right? A good one is the mental toughness inventory. How do you relate that number to them trying to add the bar, run faster or throw farther? How do you get that number into something that actually means something to that athlete? And that's where the therapeutic skills of actually being a psych are much more important than the kind of academic research ones of collecting profile and mood states. Collecting those things isn't how you change behavior. It isn't how you do things. So simply, and just to summarize it up, if I need to do something where I want quantitative data, I ask the athlete to create the term or the construct. What is it? Happiness. Out of 10, where are you? 7. Okay, why are you 7 and not a 6? What does that look like? What does 10 look like? What's an acceptable level? Get them to set their boundaries. Get them to design their constructs where you need to track something and evidence something. I don't need to evidence as much in my role in that sense. But in some areas of it, where it's like global projects, I would do. I suppose it just depends on why you want to use these things.
That's important, understanding the why behind it. So I have a prompt here. We've 70 seconds left, Hugh. So I think we'll wrap it up now. If people are looking to, well, first of all, I'd like to first thank you for coming on behalf of Aplyft. Thank you for giving up your time and really informing our followers, Stephen, with a wealth of very valuable information there. If people are looking to follow up and follow your work, where's the best places to find you?
I do have a website. It's not well maintained. I'm too busy to maintain it. And I have done a number of podcasts, so maybe a Google search like Synapse Performance, Sigma Nutrition, or the No Lift podcast, or actually the TSA podcast. I've been in all those. Or just on Twitter, but I actually don't have the capacity to take on work. So the only thing I'm doing is going to be like daily seminars or things like that. I don't have the capacity to take on more athletes. So I'm very busy at the moment and will be until the Olympics or Paralympics are held. So podiumpsychology.com or Twitter at qjgilmore.com.
That's perfect. Thanks, you. We're about to get cut off.